we're on, and we're a little late, so let's get started. That's fine. Absolutely. We're all doing what we should be doing. Okay. So we'll call the meeting to order at 5 minutes after. And I think first order of business is we have an honored guest here.
We do, yes.
And so I'm going to let Stephen, you want to do the introduction?
Right, we'll make sure we're on, we're rolling. Okay. In the interest of, what do you call it, revelation or transparency, I want to assure everybody I have a little wound here because I went to the skin doctor and he didn't like something he saw. So when you're blonde and as old as I am, that tends to happen. Okay, so I want to introduce the guest. Without further ado, this is, we have at Leland and Gray, Duran and I welcome with Frank the delegation from Hohhot, China. And I present to you Mr. Wu. Come on forward here. Let's get this together here. Have a seat. Okay, Mr. Wu. So Mr. Wu is the head of the delegation. He's the director of international relations. Is that right? Did I say that correctly? For the university, so he's actually now a bigger potato than when I saw him before. You better be careful.
介绍您是内蒙古大学艺术学院的办事办主任。那么您现在呢，和以前有一点不一样了，是大人物了。
and we have Ms. Shichi, who is the translator, and she has been here in the United States and to Leland and Gray four times. Okay, it's the fourth time. And Mr. Wu has been here six times. He came with every delegation. So we're very happy to welcome him to Leland and Gray. And I invited him to this meeting tonight, and actually Sir Chi has the agenda and has translated it, so that he has some idea about how decisions are made regarding our schools in the United States, which is, of course, quite different from China. So I'll be interested to hear what questions he has tomorrow or when we meet again. But welcome. Thank you so much.
Welcome. We're very happy to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, have a seat. Okay. Please.
All right. Hard to talk that, but we'll move on to additions and corrections. We're going to add a very brief, I think, report from Jay on the Wyndham Regional Career Center Advisory Board, I believe is
right.
The whole.
Most of that meeting, they were discussing student enrollment problems and how to boost enrollment.
Okay. At the Career Center?
At the Career Center.
Imagine really?
Yeah. And it was hard for anybody to put any input in since everybody has a dwindling student enrollment.
They all have the same problem,
So
right?
we're not alone.
We're all in the same boat.
Yeah. Okay.
And they spoke on their college programs that they have going in the credits and
Dual enrollment.
dual enrollment.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, thank you for continuing to participate in that. If there's anything else you want to share about your
I can't
role?
think of anything right now.
All right. Well, if there's ever anything that's going on at the Wyndham Regional Career Center, I hope you will contact me or contact Stephen ahead of time and get an agenda item right on. We don't put it on regularly because we don't want to put you on the spot, and I know you don't meet every month, but you meet most months during the school year.
Right. I think probably 4 times a year, and
Yeah.
the discussion came up about keeping it at the Career Center rather than
Then not
going
moving
to
around.
Wilmington
Oh.
and Hinsdale and
Okay.
other schools.
I knew I follow your meetings a little bit through the minutes online, and I did see that there was a little question that had come at a meeting about moving it around, and so you think it's going to stay at the
I
Career
think
Center?
right now I think it's going to stay.
Yeah.
Which
Okay.
it's only a 5-minute ride for me, so you can hear me.
Yeah, for you
that's
it's
good.
not. Now, if anybody's interested, I mean, Jay gets appointed every year, and I'm thrilled that Jay's willing to do it. And like he said, he's working in Brattleboro, so that part makes it easier for him. And we're very lucky to have Jay doing this because, honestly, it's been hard to fill that role from Leland and Gray. And I know the Wyndham Regional Career Center has been, you know, they felt that it's very important that Leland and Gray is represented down there. So thank you, Jay, and if there's ever anything you want to put on, just call me, we'll get it on the agenda. But it's important we stay up to date on what's happening down there, because we have quite a few kids who utilize that service down there, so.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Anything else to add to the agenda?
We won't need executive session on negotiations.
Okay, all right, great. Nothing else? Anybody? Okay, we'll move to members of the public, and we did just meet, but we don't have anyone else, I don't think. So, all right, if anybody comes in, we'll grab them then. Correspondence, I didn't check the box, I don't know if you did. Nothing in the box, okay.
I think that we can share it, yes. Although it wasn't addressed to the board, but.
Yes.
Okay, Stephen has correspondence.
So I have a piece of correspondence here. Actually, I guess I'll just read it. Anyway, so Dr. Dorfman, she and I consulted regarding our tragedy in the school community and made an appeal to the commissioner regarding the testing, which he granted an extension for the junior class in terms of the kneecap testing. But he also wrote another letter here saying, Dear Dr. Dorfman, on behalf of everyone here at the Vermont Department of Education, I want to extend our sympathies to you and your students and your staff for the tragic loss of one of your students. Please be assured that we want to provide Leland and Gray with the maximum support and flexibility permitted by federal law and Vermont State Board of Education policy. And then I think he spoke with respect to the extension here in this next paragraph. Would you like me to read that too, John? Okay. With respect to your request for an exemption from the kneecap testing for your entire 11th grade, the circumstances that prompted your request, although they are significant, do not meet the very strict parameters for exemptions noted in the federal law. After consulting with my staff and our assessment contractor, Measured Progress, what I can offer you is a 1-week extension of the assessment window with pickup of completed tests on November 1st. This will permit you to schedule the approximately 9 hours of testing during the last week of October, when things should be returning to normal for the majority of your students. Please keep in mind that students who experience this crisis on a more personal level, close friends and family, may be exempted from the testing under the category, quote, state-approved special considerations. However, we encourage you to use this option judiciously, as it is intended only for extreme cases of illness or personal crisis. Please let me know at your earliest convenience if you'd like for us to arrange the extended testing window for your students. You may also address any questions and concerns you have to me or to our Director of Assessment, Michael Hawk. Sincerely, Mondo Vilsecond, Commissioner of Education.
Thank you. And thank you, Durin, for being right on top of this. It's been a really tough time for this whole school community, as well as, you know, most especially the friends and family. Go ahead, you wanted to say something?
Thank you, and Melanie, and Sarah, and Susan, for the way you handled this, how quickly, how efficiently. I think you pretty much set the standard on how this should be dealt with in public schools. So I really want to thank you for it.
Thank you, Bauman, for bringing that up, because I think that's really important, and I think the whole board would echo that. And I appreciate this statement, because it's true. So, thank you.
There's also a WCSU crisis team that is organizing to spread the, what shall I say, the impact or the effort, the response to all of the school communities that may be affected by this. Initially, we were primarily focused on Leland, Gray, and Wardsboro and Townsend. But there certainly are reasons to be concerned about Brookline and Newpane and Mayfield, Wardsboro, and so forth.
Well, that's great. Thank you both. All right. Any other correspondence? No. We'll move on to administrative reports. Durin did send everyone a 3-part report for actual report and then 2 attachments to it. So I'll turn it back over to you, Durin. If anybody needs copies or wants to see it, I actually printed 2 of them out.
And I actually did some more work on the science analysis, so I'll hand that out in a second.
All right. Everybody go ahead, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of the dozen or so, more like 20 reports that we generate, annually. One of them is the VSAC survey, but it's actually comes out every 2 years. And it was only at this point that I could share it with you, although we've had the results for a couple of months. And I was so happy to see what the students had to say about our school in terms of how the relationship they had, how safe they felt, and how they were prepared for their futures. So in comparison to the Vermont average. So I thought there were some significant differences in what they had to say, which is a testament really to the caring, learning relationships they have with their teachers. So even if the other standardized measurements hadn't reflected that. So they felt they were prepared. I was very proud of the number of faculty members who were, all of them said yes in terms of preparing for and providing workshops on our in-service day. So we had a full day on September 28th. And there were lots of requests from different departments, primarily of what they needed in order to move forward in primarily teaching literacy or the different SIM strategies, with strategic instruction method tools that we've learned. And it was a really terrific day. And there were 3 90-minute workshops, as well as department meeting time to embed that in their curriculum. So it takes time to develop a culture of teachers teaching teachers and recognizing and, in a sense, rewarding those who have reached a greater milestone in their expertise, winning the trust of their colleagues, and to show them what's been working in their classroom. There's the depth and that comes from that, from participating in the workshop and knowing that the presenter is just a few doors away, where you can keep going back to and showing your work to. What do you think of this? What do you think of this design? And we've been relying heavily on the English department for the last year, but now we all had teachers from other departments presenting because they got so good at what they were teaching. So it was very well received. It was a great day, great day.
So it was all, the in-service then was all about teachers teaching teachers within this building? Is that
That's
what-
right.
Yep.
That's right. We didn't. I essentially contracted with them as consultants because although you're giving a 90-minute workshop, there's a lot of preparation that goes into that. And so, you know, economically, does it end up, is there a cost savings? Maybe. But in terms of the carryover for the months and maybe years to come, I think it's worth so much more than the guest coming in and then they're gone. And the full engagement, also, you know, the immediate credibility of the colleagues. So when they all signed up for workshops and got their first choices, and we ran it just like it was any other professional consultant coming in. The teachers who didn't participate were 3 of our 4 special educators and all 5 of our math teachers, because they were attending the 3rd day of their intensive math course on improving secondary mathematics with Mahesh Sharma. The course started in August and it will finish in November. So, and that has, you can see the difference that that this course is making, just walking into classrooms and seeing all of the manipulatives and the theoretical conversations they have on, say, positive and negative numbers in 7th grade, and them being able to have their positive and negative numbers, the red and the green ones, in front of them, you know, of tiles, essentially. Because one thing that the NECAP showed us for several years running is students struggling with number sense, and this is exactly what number sense is about. So that's been a great thing. Any questions about in-service or VSAC?
I had some quick question about the behavior referral data.
Oh, from prior.
Well, prior and these numbers really don't mean much to me except when you compare them to previous years. And I'm noticing that there's a lot of indicators where we seem to be going in the not so desired direction. For example, my school is preparing me well for my future. We had 67% in 2010-11. We have 62% 11-12. And there's a number of them that I would have liked to see the percentages go favorably, and they're going in the wrong direction. And I was wondering if you can speak to that.
I think just because I have noticed those trends as well, we still need to keep reporting them, and it's a work in progress. There is a variety, that we did achieve the minimum respondents we needed to return rate of over 30%, it's about 35% of students responding. Was it a different grouping of 7 through 12 than we had the previous year? Both years I can say that we had struggled to have seniors participate. So no, not all the news on the climate survey was good. So, but a specific reason for going up or down 5 or 6 points is I would like to see the trend. So first year's baseline, second year, and then to look at what we have this June. But if you have a more specific question, so I don't have an explanation.
I don't have specific questions. I'm just, noticing, for example, then this other chart where we have the referrals and consequences, again, 2010-11, 2011-12. Not the numbers because there's different enrollment, but percentage of student body. We had 7% of the student body who had suspensions in 10-11. We had 14% in 11-12. It's twice as much percentage-wise. 9% had red referrals, 23% had red referrals the following school year. So, I'm just noticing this, and as you said, it's different student population,
but there's a couple of other differences also in terms of the behavior referral data. So, the first year I was here, we had a different person running the planning room for the first 6 months of the year. So that may have something to do with the effectiveness. And a lot of kids got caught last year, if you don't mind me saying. And so I don't see the numbers going up at this time as necessarily a bad thing. And that's typically what you see, that when you clamp down a lot on misbehavior, that there'll be, and when teachers see that the behavior referral process is actually effective, they write a lot more than if they're cynical about it and say, well, I don't want to fill it out because nothing's going to happen anyway. So I did expect to see a rise.
And when's the next time we're going to do that?
And we look at as a school, we look at in January for the first. So that report would be ready for February. But I can't promise you that it will be any better, because I don't know if when the statistics are better, it means we just aren't responding as well. Is there a lot of unreported bullying? I think there is a lot of unreported bullying, because it's a very hard thing to
report.
And to encourage students, no matter how safe you make it, there's
Right.
always fears around it. So I would like to see an increase in that in a strange way, because it has to do with reporting as opposed to actual incidents.
So, Dorian, can I just ask one quick question? You mentioned that you don't know what particular groups are responding to your survey, right? Or
Well, I do have it with a breakdown by grade level, and some
but how are
grades
you able to? How are you going to address that you're capturing, a decent representation? I mean, how does this work? Is this a voluntary thing? Kids just say, take this home and fill this out and send it back in?
There are computers set up during lunches, and a lot of seniors have.
So it's a voluntary.
Yes, and they get a lollipop if they fill it out. And it's typically the middle school students fill it out a lot more than the seniors who are, taking advantage of their free pass and going out for lunch. So it's a 35% overall of the 7 through 12, and some grade levels are better represented than others. Every year I feel like we could do a better job, but I will not take classroom time to do the survey.
Was there a metric, I don't remember, comparing us for participation to other schools? Is that a metric that we
In
look
the
at?
climate survey?
Yeah, for participation
It's
compared to the
our
state?
own survey, it's our
It's an
own
internal
survey.
document?
It's an internal. The questions are based on a professionally developed survey from another school that I worked at,
Mhm.
and then I worked with a statistician in the area to make sure that the questions were valid.
I guess I was just wondering, the participation piece, is that something in the state that is better elsewhere? Is there any ideas to get more kids to participate in something like that?
It may be true in this, is it in the VSAC one, there may be statewide participation
Yeah, that's,
on that one, because that is a statewide document, right?
Yep.
I'm just wondering where we are, because I looked at, when I read the whole thing, I looked, compared to the state, we look pretty good in the different categories. I'm curious on just participation in this, on the state level. Are we hitting the same number of people, we're getting the same number of kids, responding to that? Do we know?
I don't have an answer to your
Yeah,
question.
clearly the way to get 100% participation is to do it in class. And
Right.
I just heard Karen say that's something she wanted to spend the time on. Also, you understand, you probably remember being in class when you were obliged to do something in class that everybody did, fill in the blanks, that the quality necessarily wasn't there. So I think we probably, certainly, I believe that probably the quality of the responses is pretty accurate for those people that participate in this circumstance. The problem is that it's hard to accept over time to get an idea that there's any trend or there's any, and actually that's a very interesting issue for the board to consider, because we should be challenged to come up with indicators that show real growth or progress. And if in fact it's not showing anything, or we can't act upon what we're getting for the results, then, then I think the board has every reason to question whether we should spend the time doing it. I mean, that's...
So I'm just curious, comparing on the state level, Stephen, if there's
I
other...
wouldn't want to do that until we've had a few more rounds, but...
If there's other schools that have more participation, I'm not advocating to do it during school time, but is there something they're doing that gives them more participation than us? Is it something, worth looking at?
Well, arguably, we do it in late May, early June. It's a tough time because there's a lot of activity happening in the building. We could bring carts around so students fill it out at homeroom. I would hate to think that somehow their responses would change because it would feel less than
Yeah.
voluntary.
Yep.
But there are options,
Just
and we're still
ideas, yeah.
exploring it. And we certainly use the data. When
Right.
the leadership
Yeah.
group met over the summer, we spent 3 hours on that information to be able to use it as decision-making. And the school improvement coordinator for Leland and Gray, he has like 29 schools from that he serves as part of No Child Left Behind, schools not making adequate yearly progress. We met with our improvement team, and when I started quoting from that survey, if you don't mind me saying, boy, did his pen start going. Oh, what was that number? What was that number? That all, we were sharing a lot of qualitative information about our school, specifically about their school climate indicator. But once I started, throwing out the numbers, all of a sudden that mattered a whole lot. It was a lot more valid than the qualitative piece. So that was just an interesting anecdote.
Well,
So
first,
someone thinks it's valid.
I think it's actually great that these questions are coming out, and honestly, I'll give it a little tribute to ourselves as a board, where we're actually considering data, requesting data, asking for data, looking at data, and asking for outcomes from the use of data. So this is great, and I think it's sort of opened my eyes a little bit, probably the rest of you, 35% participation rate. I'm sure that as a staff, you all take that into consideration heavily. But I would say that, this is clearly something that we're listening to. So we would look to the administration and you and your staff as to whether this is, I would, going along with what Stephen said, I would hate for us to say, well, this isn't, doesn't seem to be giving us enough feedback. I would rather that comes from you at this point, and if you think that you're getting useful data on a school climate survey right now, even with only 35% participation rate, that's great, but clearly the board is looking for this kind of feedback, so if there's something more you feel like can be done, that'd be great too. I think. Does anybody feel differently about that? I think we're doing a good job.
Okay. So the last piece, Peter Goldrick made these charts for us because it's so much fun.
Are you going on to the science?
Yes.
Can I just ask one question?
Sure.
About the VSAC survey? Because
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one who noticed that 55% of our 2010 class went on to college or training program, nearly all full-time, and statewide average was 73%. And then that gap year thing was quite notable, with 26% of ours reporting saying they took a gap year, whereas the statewide is 5%. And that seems quite significant to me. So I just wanted to know if you could just give some feedback on that.
I have a personal opinion,
Yeah,
but it's
that's
not,
Whatever.
okay, I mean, it's not scientifically proven. From what I understand, and Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, the college acceptance or participation rate is between 50 and 60% of each graduating class. That's the proof. So it is significantly lower than the state average. My feeling is that when interviewed, that the students still feel, well, I want to go to college, and either I didn't do the application process, I don't have the money, I didn't have the guidance, whatever reason that the student didn't get to that point where they could go to college the following fall, there's still optimism, saying, well, I'm taking a year off. You know, I need the money, I need more time. I worry about that because it means that they're not in school as a senior getting the, you know, truckloads of support that you get as a senior in the college application process. So I am not optimistic that that 26% ends up going to college.
Okay, so that doesn't, that opens up a sort of another question for me. That doesn't include the kids who are applying and then taking a year off, deferring their if they're applying and deferring, they're included in that 55%, is that?
No, I would say that they're in the 26%.
Okay,
But
okay.
not a lot of kids do that. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's a small percentage, maybe 5% of students going to college do a gap year. I mean, it's pretty small. I can't imagine it being that statistically different that suddenly it's going to be, because 55% is right in the middle of this 50 to 60% average of kids who go into college from Leland Gray.
So just, I don't want to belabor this too much,
Yeah.
but the training program piece, because honestly, we all know college isn't for everyone, and what they're talking about is post-secondary education. And so training programs would be, for example, I don't know.
Cosmetology,
Okay.
hairdressing.
So, and we're comparing apples to apples when we look at this VSAC survey with the statewide feedback. So it's the same types of post.
Right, some
Training,
kind of,
okay.
yeah,
Question is true.
Okay.
auto mechanics
Okay.
or,
All right, very good. Okay.
that's an
Just- it
area
just
that
seems
Leland and Gray
significant
needs
to me.
to, it's very significant,
Yeah.
very significant. There are high schools in Vermont where 80%,
Right.
you know, 87% of the
Right.
students finish and go on to college. And Leland and Gray is not at that place yet.
Okay. So that's something that we're addressing and looking at and seeing whether, are we trying to improve that? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
very much
Thank
so,
you. All right.
very much so.
That's-
Well, I'd also suggest to the board that it's an issue of public interest that we do not properly fund or support students to go to college. And that you have to look to your legislators, both at the federal and the state level, to significantly increase the support if the VSAC program's been cut.
But there's no question about that.
Well, what's the
But-
percent of jobs in this country that require a college diploma?
I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know if anyone else does, but I want to say, though, that this isn't just
I'm
about
thinking
college.
we're running these career preparation programs.
Yeah.
I think that that's at least as important, if not more so than.
But that's included in here, in that 55%. That's what I'm
No,
trying
we're
to
talking
point
about
out.
training people while they're still in high school, that come out of high school and go into a career
Go into a
directly.
business, yeah.
And that 95% of the graduates were employed a year later compared to 76% are
Right.
not. So that our students are leaving. I mean, 95% have a job the next year. That's a lot better than the national average in general.
That's supporting your point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
60% jobs is what they're saying.
Require or
60%?
don't require?
Require a post-high school degree.
60% of jobs nationwide, are you saying? Is that what you're looking at?
American Public Media
Okay.
.org. Nearly 60% of all jobs in the U.S. economy require higher education beyond high school.
Okay.
So
So
55%
in
is not
1970 it was
that far
26%.
off from
It's changed.
where it should be.
And my only point for bringing it up is because it's quite significantly different from other schools in the state of Vermont. I just want to make sure that we're looking at
And
this.
they face
And
the
clearly
same
we are.
issues with VSAC monies and all that.
Oh, yeah,
There's-
yeah.
There's
No,
no difference.
Yeah.
Right.
Right,
but-
there's no
but
difference really.
Well, I do think that our communities, the communities that we serve, are more susceptible than some, if we're comparing to Burlington or Montreal or something, than some across the state. Okay, I do recognize that we have a higher level of poverty than we do in some of the neighboring and other districts that we compare with. In fact, when Doreen and I were trying to challenge ourselves to find a demographically similar sized high school to compare our action plan for improving performance vis-a-vis the AYP premise and yearly progress, we have a hard time finding one. I mean,
Right.
there are some, but that doesn't, they may be just as hurting in terms of the AYP.
So the good news is that we're doing great work across the SU to improve test scores for students that are
Yeah, I was
on
going
that.
to comment to that when we get to mine.
Yeah, well, I mean, exactly. We'll come to that in other ways. And I know we're also seeing some results of that even right here, which if no one else has any other questions about the VSEC survey, we might as well move right on to that science because
I didn't
that's...
mean to jump right into the science.
No, it's fine. It was just...
Emily,
Yeah, go
if
ahead.
I could just mention that related to the issues, we know that Burlington area is about 300,000 people. That's half the state, and then you got Brattleboro and you got Rutland and so on. And it's in those communities where the dual credit options are available, and that's where students are taking college credits as junior and seniors. There are also much more accessible vocational programs that allow for the transition. So I would like to see the data that shows the small rural schools that don't have a university within a close range. As Stephen was just saying, the comparable, not that we should make it any excuses, but I think it's a huge obstacle for us. When you look at what the dual credit option in Brattleboro provides those students versus ours, it's striking. And, the legislature was wrestling with those issues this past year.
And they'll be doing it again.
That's dual credit more so than, isn't that sort of the idea of AP?
Not
I
really.
know, it's not.
Not really. It's similar, but so much more. When you have a partnership with your community college right in your own high school, they come to your building
Sometimes.
and they
Sometimes students
have the vocational training programs that you're talking about that can be assigned a college credit for or not, depending on the student's interests. But the resources is a very large inequity in the resources across the state, and that varies from rural to less rural.
Well, I know there's work going on in the building with dual enrollment already, so...
The plan is that this fall term will be the first time that levels 3 and 4 foreign language will, for students who qualify, if their grades are high enough, will earn dual credit. So 3 college credit for each of those classes through SIT, the School of International Training. I don't have the final letter
Yeah.
yet but we have a verbal agreement, and in the next couple of weeks, we'll be sharing that with students and the enrollment process.
That's great.
Now, are those credits transferable just to SIT, or are they throughout the
Anywhere.
whole state?
We actually did some research on that because that's what I was concerned about. So who would accept this? Would UVM or Castleton, would they accept SIT's credits? And the answer was yes. So they look at the whole package in terms of a student applying to the school. They don't necessarily accept everything, but whether it was CCV or SIT, they would be accepted. So that's
So at least
information
for
we got.
that department and that method, if that's, we're already stepping in, and we, you know, like Frank's saying, the more we can do in that area, the better.
For us, the most obvious place to start has been foreign language, because it's the clearest link to what you would do in college. Because honestly, Spanish 1 at the college level is the same as the Spanish 1 at Leland and Gray, but we have 7th graders in it. So that's why we made the agreement that we would do it for just the 3rd and 4th levels. And once we have that established, I don't know if it will be starting this spring or next fall, that we'd be targeting other areas like economics, military history, psychology, that those become credible classes too, like dual credit, I should say. That's the direction we're headed in.
Well, I applaud you on that.
The difference with Brattleboro is they have lots and lots of electives. So with a much larger student population, they may have one section of a course that they can fill, and that may be a dual credit course. Whereas we need a significant percentage of our students to just fill a section. So it was amazing this year. For the first time, we filled 2 sections of psychology because of student interest. But we will never have a course like abnormal psychology or clinical psychology or something. Whereas Brattleboro is because of the number of students they have, can have more specializations than we can.
And it's my understanding that this dual credit, I sent through several test options where testifying was happening up at the state level, and it sounds to me like it's really opening up opportunities for students who normally, maybe even first-generation college students, and these are students who wouldn't necessarily be looking at college after, you know, maybe part of that.
That's
5%.
right.
And so that's really great, which is why Frank, I'm sure, brought it up.
And that's the biggest distinction from advanced placement classes.
Right.
That those are already extremely high, extremely is a big word, but it's a very high standard. It's a hard course, even in a college, it would be considered a hard course. And a student will have had to have demonstrated quite a bit of mastery to get into the AP course, or even just their own desire to be in a class that rigorous. Whereas you do a couple of years of French, and then you do French 3, and hey, I can actually, if I get a certain grade in this course, I can get 3 college credits out of it. I never thought I could.
Yeah, that was great. All right, other
What about-
questions? Go ahead.
I mean, there's a lot of universities doing online classes. Can we work something like that with the VHS?
So what would be the advantage of that, are you thinking?
The dual credit thing.
Uh-huh.
I'm just moving stuff around in my head.
So we do have students who are pursuing online learning, and there's a number of organizations or institutions that they work with, and some of them are dual credit, like I guess, and like it's through a university, and some are not. We have a couple of students doing an MIT course online, but there's no dual enrollment, there's no accreditation, because all of MIT's courses you can take them online now. So it's sort of case by case.
Yeah.
But we were not planning on entering into a relationship with, say, the University of Phoenix, so that our students could start taking their courses, because it's a considerable expense, and there's a limited number of spaces, and students learn better in the classroom with their teachers. Quite a few studies that should. Now, there are exceptions, and they're the ones pursuing those options. But for us, to be able to be with some really good teachers here at our school and earn college credit for it is the focus at this point. And not to say that we wouldn't do that sometime in the future.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for the feedback.
So let's see if I can get this thing working again. This is just a couple of slides, just to, come on, you can do it. So I asked Peter Goldrick to make just some charts so that you can see the comparison of the growth that's happened, and then we can dig at the data, because this is just a simplification. So here's grade 11. Our target was that 35% of our students would show proficiency, earning a 3 or a 4 on the exam. And you can, the blue line is the past scores that we've had. You can see the years below and where we are this year, and compared to the state, which is in red. And then this one is for grade 8. So they were right on target for the 8th graders. That's it for the flashy
So,
part.
do you think it's because more effort? Because remember, you are just starting that requirement of earth science, of the science. So, is that because there's more effort going on here?
I came up with 10 reasons.
But we're very excited to hear this.
So, I'll pass it around. Right, top 10. Top 10.
Well, your numbers are going in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Maybe you don't need to add that towards your science.
There's yours, and you can pass this.
Well, it's still not even half the class yet, so.
No, believe me.
Okay.
So on the, I think what's also very exciting about this data is if you look at grade 11, so at the very top of the first page, where all the areas were of strength especially increased, so exciting because that's an area that's been of weakness before. But if you look at where it says SES, so students which is socioeconomic status, students who are eligible for free and reduced meals, if you look at that difference, that 33% of our students eligible for free or reduced meals pass the test compared to the state average of less than half that.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
Really.
I'm sorry.
No, it is.
That blew me away when I saw that. And so you can see that our students who are not eligible for free and reduced meals, that almost half of them pass the exam. And it's very similar if we peruse down to grade 8, and you see that, let's see, for it's very similar. For it's 29% for socioeconomic status, and for the state it's 16%. Now, clearly, looking at the grade 8, there's still a disparity between the males and the females in the class and the scores that they earned. In the past, that's been the reverse. That they were, I mean, it sort of fluctuated each year, but but that's certainly something to take into account. And on the second page, there's the list of 10, I mean, so exciting to be able to say that we're tied with Middlebury as the 5th ranking school for the juniors. And you can see sort of the top third of the page, the other schools that had outperformed us. But those are the other schools that are at the level that we are, and they're all well north of White River Junction. And I would say that the biggest reason is the first of why is the first one listed there about the curriculum alignment work that happened last year. While we hadn't, the earth science course established at that point in the 8th grade and in the other courses, there was a focus on realigning. So the 11th graders happened to be in biology or whatever, or meteorology or whatever they were taking. There was a much more concerted effort on the awareness of the standards on the science teacher's part. There were also, the second reason there, about the 25-minute advisories devoted to actually preparing students for the test. They called it demystifying the test. I can just keep running through these, or I can let you read it and ask questions, because you probably all read it already. Well, couldn't have read it already, because I revised it.
Why don't you flip through it? Go ahead.
Okay. So for the 8th graders, they had 50% more instruction in science this past year, and this year also, because they have a lab period every other day. So that's a significant change. And also, in the 8th grade, the NECAP questions were integrated directly into classroom activities. And the teacher was sort of repairing the plane while flying it. So it wasn't the new 8th grade course now called the Physical World. It was called, I think it was called Earth Science last year. But that teacher was already beginning to integrate the curricular changes. I mean, you may recall that we worked with a consultant from Windsor High School, a school that already had done this curriculum alignment. So it couldn't have been done without her consultation. And then number 6, we had direct incentives that came from the board, asking us to do this, and I think it went a long way. And we had number 7, we had students in much smaller groups. While it was typical to have science teachers proctoring the exam, it's a practice we continue, but rather than like the arena style, which 60, 70 kids in Dutton, that they were in the small groups. And since I was working with my leadership team on this, a person said, well, I think that the fact that the kids had free breakfast and snack every day for the majority of the year may have made a difference too. Certainly the science budget for equipment and supplies was adequate, and that they had what they needed, especially for the lab activities, so that there were the experiential learning. And then 10, which maybe, I guess I like the number 10 best for last, or you might say it's last but maybe the least, is the literacy initiative, because it began last fall. And so the students had a full year of having to write across the curriculum.
It's just very funny to see Kansas and science education side to side.
Oh, really?
Two other things, you know.
Yeah.
Disassociate the university from the state board.
That's right.
Oh.
Yeah. I get
I'm
you.
sure it has nothing to do.
And it doesn't say anything about learning science, it's been writing. They wrote a lot about that.
Quite an observation.
Hi, Dory.
Right. Thank you.
Thoughts, questions?
I'm going to open it for questions, but before we do, I just want to say, that, this is wonderful news and wonderful for us, but wonderful for the students. That's really what's the most important thing here. Not only are they doing better, but we're all sitting here applauding what they're doing, which is going to really help them as they move forward with whatever challenges they meet. And I think this is really incredible and so rapid for us to have that. Now, who knows what our next batch of scores will be, but this will never go away. This is really important and significant. So, does anybody have any questions about what you're seeing? It was very helpful to have those 10 reasons. Thank you for doing that.
Knowing what classes are coming up through the ranks right now, do you still see these numbers climbing like they are?
Yes. I think it'll get better.
I know every year it gets different.
Testing a different way.
I think with the high quality of science education that's happening in the elementary schools, and that their scores are pretty good, or if not excellent, like in Townsend, this is the first year of the full implementation of, so when I think of our current 8th graders, and what they got in 7th grade last year and getting this year, and that this is the first year that we're offering earth science, and 3/4 approximately of our juniors are taking it, even though it's not a required class yet. If it was just 8th grade or 11th grade, I would be less optimistic. But because it happened in both cases, that they met the targets, that's, I think, real. But I don't generally look at a class and say, oh, they're not going to do as well as another class. When there's a big gender disparity, I get worried about writing. If there's a class with, unfortunately, how it is in Vermont, and the rest of the country, if there's a class that's like 60, 65% boys, the writing scores go down significantly unless significant interventions are made to help them with their writing, which is what we're doing as a school. So we'll see when they're taking their writing tests now. We get those scores in early February.
Very good.
Comments, questions? Paul's nodding his head.
No, it's just really nice to see some real data, and have some goals that we can see we're meeting, because we put a lot of effort into, coming up with something that you could see changes. So I think it's excellent.
Sorry, it's been a long board report today.
No, this has been, every piece of this has been really important, and don't ever want to give up this time.
And Stephen signed all the certificates and the letters for every student who achieved proficiency on the exam. They get a superintendent's award of distinction in science along with the letter. So
Individually addressed letters. Yeah, we intend to recognize kids for doing that. I think that's part of the solution. Part of getting there, trying to keep the ball rolling. I want to commend Doreen for leadership and taking initiatives with regard to the revision and realignment of the science curriculum, hiring a consultant, staying with it, not just having somebody come in and then leave, but following up. I think that model, we have reason to believe that things will continue to improve in all subject areas, following that same model of our teachers' professional development, leading to them being able to provide the coaching and the support within a faculty and among the schools at the elementary level to continue this progress. I'm very encouraged. Frankly, it's nice to see some good news on these particular indicators. I want to make sure that we're reminding ourselves that this is just a very narrow segment of what we're talking about when we're educating the whole child. So, we'll continue to be challenging ourselves administratively and as boards to come up with other indicators. That's why the discussion regarding the school climate was of interest. I recently challenged a couple of boards to come up with ways to measure and endorse progress on presentations. What are the ways you assess a child's ability to present at an increasingly complex level over K through 12 education. I purposely didn't present a report tonight written form. I'm not going to speak at length, but I did want to reinforce the idea about this Mahesh Sharma math course really having a significant effect. I think a powerful effect in the long term. I'm attending the course myself. I've attended the first 4 days. I got 2 more days to go, but I also intend to participate in the 2 strands at the K through 2, grade 2 level and the 3 through 6 level that he's going to continue through this year. This is really, once again, an effort to make it a K through 12 continuum of professional development that is really cohesive and has a real prospect of having significant change on how we teach math, which is what the Common Core is about. I'll pass around their twin papers here, and what they are the reprints of the information that teachers got at the regional in-service for particularly in our SU, the teachers in grades K through 6. And we were joined by colleagues from most of the other supervisory unions, except those schools that were under technical assistance or had some other professional development training in their buildings, such as Leland and Gray. So there weren't, I don't know whether there are many high school people there at all. Did you get there, Jeremy? No. So you don't want to read this now or ask me questions about it. You want to take it home and put yourself to sleep with it if you like. But it is probably the most succinct and brief introduction to what is significantly different about the Common Core and the expectations as we move to those standards 2015. So, yeah, please. Thank you so much. I know you so much of this you want to take on. Right. Bye-bye.
So the Common Core standard is going to be in place for math and science by 2015?
Math and language arts.
Sorry, math and language arts. And then what about for science?
Well, it's on the timeline, but it'll be a couple years after
Beyond
that.
that?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. But you're already incorporating it, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
You're like getting ahead of the game, trying to.
Yeah, actually, I
You
am.
see what's coming.
Yeah, there were a number of teachers who actually provided at the elementary level facilitation for these work groups at grade levels, and they came from our supervisory union, primarily because we have the most widely trained in professional learning communities, the protocols of professional learning communities to be able to apply to that kind of setting. So we had a number of people who stepped up, and they reported very favorably about their experience. But I think some other places, some other people really question whether it's worthwhile bringing everybody together like that. And I don't know how long or whether I'm meeting with the superintendents tomorrow to get the feedback about whether we continue to have that regional day, that commitment throughout the southeast Vermont region.
Or whether we can use it for better.
Yes, right. Yes, certainly.
Make better use of the time.
I certainly supported Duren's effort to keep the teachers here to follow up on the learning within the school community. Yep. So let's see. I think that was it
Before
on
you
my
move
list.
on
Yeah.
from this, I just want to say that I don't want to keep saying that I've been around a little while, but I have, and unfortunately sometimes. But seriously, the focus on professional development that we have been enjoying as boards and in fact as staff over the last 4 to 6 years. It started under the last superintendent, and I applaud her for the focus then, and I applaud you even more, Stephen, for continuing not only to make it a priority, but to make it grow over the years. And then bringing Duren in and what you've done and your focus on professional development, I truly believe this is not only why we're seeing improvements, but it's why we're going to continue to see improvements. It's not just that we're targeting professional development and the needs of our students, but we're making it a priority. And I can't say enough about how thrilled I am about that, and I'm sure the board all agrees. I hope you all agree with that, because it's really significant. It really is.
So what we're trying to do is build internal capacity. That is the staff, the people that we have on board who are fine teachers, to be continually improving and investing in ourselves, to put it that way, in our own school communities, in a way that will have a lasting value to them professionally, even if they choose to work someplace else sometime. But that really is, I think, what makes me the most optimistic, because people who are engaged learners will derive better satisfaction from their teaching and the learning of their students. And so it'll be a much more rewarding professional environment for our teachers to work. That's our goal. That's our administrative goal. And I appreciate the board's continued support for professional development in that way.
SUI.
Yeah, K's and club. Bringing it all together. That's the challenge.
Something else?
Working on it. No, I was just referring back to my notes. I think I covered everything there. I did have a little something visual to pass around. I'm going to actually give a little mini lecture to our Chinese guests about this thing from Tony Wagner, which is play, purpose, and passion, and what that means for education in all classes, in all endeavors, and in the workplace, of course. On the back side is the new cover for the new standards for professional license, both as teachers and as administrators. I'm on board that is responsible for putting this out, we actually have approved this cover. So I'm just giving you a sneak preview of what the cover looks like. The guts are also online, but that's something just to pass around. I think the 3 Ps, play, purpose, and passion, are something to really reflect on as you work in board members to support education.
That's great. I love the vision part. Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions for Stephen about anything he reported on or anything else?
Oh, yes. Oh, Frank's going to come up with that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we're going on. You just segued
Okay.
right into you, or which?
Very good. I got
Oh,
a
thank
couple
you.
things on the agenda, and then one that was not, but it's a routine for my section of the agenda, a financial report. So if I could start with that, and then we got a couple of motions that I would be looking for. So this is the fiscal year end financial statement. I've given you sort of a general outlook of what our fiscal year end was going to look like. The auditors are scheduled to be in next week, and they will go over this, and it will become an official document. I expect that this will come out somewhere close to where this report reflects. So here it is, the revenue plan. At the top there you see actual $6,429,000 received, and then at the bottom $6,434,000 spent. So on a $6 million plan, that's a very, very small variance, and we are wrapping up fiscal year 12 in a very good shape. If you flip over the page, you see the balance sheet, and that's the accumulation of all of our surpluses and deficits since 1970. And you see our equity is $17,000. So that's where public school wants to be generally, is break even, non-profit, okay, but not a deficit. So there's the good news. If we look at the revenue and expense, again, just for a moment, as you recall, Durin had a number of structural changes that the board approved, and as you can see, they netted out pretty nicely to essentially right on target. But where you do see variances, let me give you, because it is a year-end report, just a quick explanation, and I'm glad to answer any questions. So when there are variances above like $20,000 against the plan, generally that's associated with the restructuring. So the biggest restructure, as you I'm sure recall, is the administrative services, where we eliminated a position and redistributed that to several other areas. For example, co-curricular, $37,000 variance. That's where we made a new position full-time that was part-time. We reorganized, you remember initially cutting back on several of the instructional programs, foreign language, and music. Those variances are there because we restored those programs. And we restored those programs because of the federal jobs money that came specifically to fund those sorts of things. So I'm glad to answer any questions, but in a sort of a snapshot, we received $100,000 more in revenues than originally planned. Most of that was the federal jobs money, and we spent that. And again, it was basically planned program changes that were funded. So overall, we are ending up in fiscally solid shape. Maybe the last thing I'll mention is facilities. You see a large variance there. I asked the board for the authority to transfer a projected surplus back in June into the capital reserve fund to be a reserve for the those columns that we see changing colors. the kind of colors we don't like. So we are in the process of evaluating that. We do have a preliminary report, and we will need those resources to address the problem. The good news is the engineers are saying there's really no structural issues, but over time we need to address the rust that's occurring. So we have that reserve. You can see that reserve fit within the tax rate that funded this $6,328,000 plan. So we will do that. So are there any questions I can answer regarding the financial report?
I have a quick question, not regarding this report, but we're heading into the next year's budget where we will not have the $100,000, which was a one-time grant. Do you have a sense of how that's going to affect us?
Yes. Well, when we put together fiscal year 13, we knew we wouldn't have that revenue, and so we made a number of adjustments to balance the budget again. You know, fiscal year 13 was a balanced plan, and we had no prior year deficit to resolve, and we, as I said, we knew that we didn't have the federal jobs fund, so that's why the tax rate went up a little more than what we would have liked to have seen it go up. But the one thing that I reported last meeting is that just as you see this first number on the page here where the tuition revenues is short $118,000, unfortunately this is reoccurred this fiscal year already. If things stay the way they are, then we're looking at maybe as much as a 2% deficit because of lower enrollment than what we knew was in place as sixth graders when we were putting together the budget. So I would say that's the only implication that we are going to have to wrestle with in a couple of months as we put together fiscal year 14. How do we address that?
So the anticipation is that it will be a similar number
At this point, yes. Yep.
in lower tuition revenue.
But we know that changes,
Yeah.
So, and it's a double whammy, unfortunately, because if we project a shortfall this year and we see the same lower number of students, going from some 80 students down to 55 students, you double the impact, right? Because you got to bring in the unforeseen deficit, and then you got to put in the potential. So, that's part of the challenge that we have, and we've begun that conversation administratively.
Well, I don't want to interrupt you, but we've had that conversation at this board level for a number of years as well. I mean, how many times have we said, we know what's coming? Well, it's here.
It's here.
I mean, and we knew this. It's just that it's really hard to look at the numbers, but.
On the other hand, I'll just, another quick point is, some of the indicators in terms of the use of the resources that the commissioner looks at, the legislature looks at, the additional column on this document, the far right, how much are we spending on overhead versus direct instruction versus student support services? That's what those numbers represent. And the subtotal general instruction, the 66%, that's typical in high schools where 2/3 of our resources are instruction, and then a significant amount, and this is what gets to our earlier discussion around student climate and behavior. A significant amount goes to student support. So it's not direct classroom instruction, but it's essential. And there are studies that will show that the most successful schools, particularly in Vermont, are those that are spending 10% on student support services to address the struggling student or the unique situations that students and families all go through. So in a general overview, there's nothing out of balance with as we struggle with these potential reductions. it's not like we have a program that's over the recess. So it'll be a challenge, and it'll probably be a balanced impact on the whole system.
Any other questions for Frank on that financial report?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, and then
Any more things?
I had a couple of things on the agenda just for a vote. One is the renewal of the food service contract for fiscal year 13, our current year. So we've had the Abbey Food Services Group, it's called the Food Service Management Corporation contract, and I'm recommending that we renew that. They have held their management fee pricing at $10,000 for the last 4 years. There's been no increase. There is a significant increase in emphasis at the federal level, the National School Lunch Program level, on more vegetables, less fat, more grains, and Abbey Food Services is embracing that. So, as far as I know, we're really pleased with their effort, and I recommend that you approve the extension of a additional year for the Abbey Food Service contract.
We need a motion on that.
I'll move to approve the Abbey Food Service contract being extended for another year.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
FY13.
Any questions or comments about the food service contract? If not, all those in favor of the motion to approve the 1-year extension on the food service contract to Abbey Group, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Thanks.
Good, and Tara, if you could send me the draft minutes, that'd be great, because I got to send them up to Montpelier. Thank you. And then the other is just we had a personnel change, so I'm asking for if you would approve a resolution to add Marty Testo to the as a check signer for the Student Activity Fund and the Special Revenue Fund for Leland Gray.
Do you have some sort of pre-printed banking
Right.
resolution?
I think we just need to have a motion saying exactly what it says on the agenda, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, sometimes the banks do their own thing. I was
Yeah.
just going to include that if I made the motion.
They need to see board minutes of
Okay.
of
Did
an
we approve this?
approval to for a resolution
Okay.
to authorize him as a check signer.
No problem. Move to approve a banking resolution to add Martin Testo as an authorized check signer for the Student Activity Fund and Special Revenue Funds.
Second.
Okay, Mike seconded it. Any questions or comments?
Ask a
Go ahead.
question?
Yep.
Does typically athletic director have this privilege, or is this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is primarily to sign the game official checks if I'm not available.
Right.
But generally, I do sign it.
But it does happen occasionally, I know that they need to. So.
Are there any checks and balances?
Absolutely, yeah. The athletic director and activities director does not have access to the check stock, so he couldn't write himself a check. He can't get to the check stock, he doesn't do deposits. He doesn't do bank reconciliation. So essentially, he has no opportunity to breach internal control.
Okay. If there's no other questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I think that's it.
Staffing.
Oh, yes,
You got
right.
something else?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you do.
I am pleased to announce that at Wyndham Central, we have hired a new accountant. The previous person, Dana Ladd, elected to move on to other opportunities. And so we've just completed a search and made an offer to a very strong candidate who has accepted the position. So we'll have a new accountant October 24th. Wyndham Central.
Very good. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank
It
you.
was a fairly
It was a very strong pool.
good.
Yeah.
It was not, there were a number of people
That's
who could have
nice.
served.
Mhm.
We always feel lucky when that happens. 'Cause it doesn't
Yeah, and
always-
it was Craigslist that brought in the most applicants. And
Interestingly enough, that's what it always is, isn't it?
Well, we think particularly in that
That
field, you
field,
know, in a
right.
field that's related to any of the business, or, you know, they're not going to be tuned into School Spring.
Right, not so much. No. All right, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, old business, regional education district. Oh, boy.
By the way, his name is Randy Morton,
Randy
Randy
Morton.
Morton.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
for the record.
In case you visitors just want sometime, we'll know what it is. Okay, regional education district, you're gonna report on it?
Bruce?
I don't feel like it either of you guys.
Joe said he was going.
Well, you read in the paper, let's just leave it at that, eh?
It's been a,
Yeah, the
it's
paper
been
said
up
it
again
all.
and a down again for us, for regional education district. We are still moving forward with our study, and we have a meeting scheduled for the November 28th.
November 28th, yes, I should have added that to our
And
list.
I think you're all aware that Wyndham has pulled out of the process. They did attend the last meeting, and as well as some Wyndham residents. That was last week we met.
Yes.
And they reported on their, Wyndham had actually held a public information meeting. And were you there? Yeah, you were there. Oh, that's right. I remember you were there. And, that was heavily attended, and they reported out to the Red Committee the outcome of that. And we had to make a decision at our last meeting whether we were going to consider doing a unified union school district. I will not call it a MUD because I've been
Must
directed
be.
you're not supposed to.
Must be.
We're calling it a modified, just a modified red, if it's easier, just for
Good.
people to understand. That we're not going to go forward with that. We're going to continue forward with what our consultant has recommended. That is that we can continue with a red, a regional education district. I think there's still some, the jury's still out, as it typically.
We'll see
whether
what
we actually
legal
can.
advice we get back
Right,
at
we're
the next
still
meeting.
looking at it. I was actually informed by the person who's heading this from the DOE that still isn't, that's not really an option for us, but I said to him, you go ahead to our consultant and speak to him because he's the one who's advising us on this. So right now, we've been advised that we can continue with a red at this point until our next meeting. That's probably where we're headed, and we'll hopefully have some more answers at the next meeting. I encourage all of you to come, as I always do. It's very interesting. And I can just mention the
Yeah, but I'm just going to say the consultant at that, the reason why the interest, the November 28th meeting may be of interest is the consultant is presenting a more succinct and clear distillation of the pros and cons of this, with the idea that then the representatives on the Red Committee can go back to their communities. It's particularly of interest in Jamaica. The board wants to have a
The
public
board wants
meeting
to
with
have
the
a-
town
like
to
Wyndham
see
did.
where people stand. Anyway, that certainly will be available online as well. You can't make it to the meeting, but that,
The meeting's here.
This is, the process will continue. That's, and the K through 12 red approach means that any of the 4 towns that will be called to vote, if they voted no, if any of the 4 voted no, then you would not have a district formed.
everything would go back to where it is. So, and then just a quick aside, sort of as a subcategory to this, Wyndham Central and Wyndham Southwest Supervisory Union have also entered into a study or at least a conversation to start a study to look at any kind of form of collaboration between the two SUs. And that, I look positively at that one as well. So they really are separate from each other, but they may not remain separate depending on what the conversation, what comes out of that. So.
Yeah, and particularly relevant to you as members of the Leland Gray Board is that the Twin Valley Board is certainly acutely aware of the difficulties they faced in sustaining, a complete classical high school opportunity in the Deerfield Valley, just as we are here in the West River Valley. So there was at least some interest in making looking towards ways that the two schools, Twin Valley and Leland and Gray, could be complementary or be collaborating or combining resources in a way to provide education. Now, once again, this gets to possibility of online
I know all of you.
education, but
Right.
I mean, I'm just trying to make sure that you appreciate the broadness of this kind of study. It can be narrowly defined as operations, financial, transportation, whatever, or it can be instructional. I certainly think professional development, mentoring programs, and so forth. Everything was on the list. There was a tremendous brainstorming at
Yeah.
that meeting.
We did have one meeting last week before,
2 weeks,
2 weeks
yeah.
ago now. And so we did vote to move forward, and I'm optimistic about any kind of collaboration that we can do that'll help both SUs. I will say that Wyndham Southwest has found themselves in a much more challenging situation than we are in right now, and that is that they have not only lost their superintendent, they've lost their business manager as well. So that I know has been a big part of what prompted them to, reach out to neighboring SUs. And as they were reaching out to neighboring SUs, they really did look closely at Wyndham Central, and the reason was because they felt that we were much more aligned to the way their structure is as well, because the small school districts were larger, but not necessarily
They have
a
some
lot larger.
non-operational school
Yeah, they have
districts, Searsburg, and
we have more
they
school
small
districts
schools.
within our SU. but-
Halifax has 56. They got a similar situation.
It's Twin Valley 8 to 12, 7 to 12.
7-12.
Twin Valley is
Twin
actually
Valley
7
is
through
7
12, although they now are going to have a system where all the elementary students from Whitingham and Wilmington go to
Deerfield
the
Valley.
Deerfield Valley School, which will be expanded on Route 100
So
north
that's
of Wilmington.
Part of Twin Valley.
And then the high school will be combined with the middle school down at the Whitingham campus.
What's the enrollment?
Frank, 250 at the high school, something like that?
Mhm.
Yeah, they're a little smaller than,
Yeah.
and they're dealing with the same challenges like.
And at one time, they had two high schools, Wilmington and
Enrollment
Whitingham.
decline.
That was a Whitingham K through 12 school, and we graduated 12 to 20 kids a year.
It's clear that they are very familiar with governance discussions like we are. So they made that very clear to us. So any questions or comments about either of the RED or the WSSU?
I appreciate the attendance. We had representation from every school district except Townsend, I think, at that meeting at the joint SUs.
That's great.
So that includes Stratton and Winall.
Cool.
Wyndham?
And we're
Everybody's there.
still developing that committee. There's a 3-person committee
Right.
from each side.
From each side,
So
yeah.
I don't know where the status is for them, and we still, we
yeah.
still have to pick the third person on.
I'm pretty sure.
Anyway, read your emails as they come if you can. I try to make sure, I actually sent one to every board member in Wyndham Central asking for you to, if you're interested, to put your name in for being the third participant. And I sent that to, it was a little bit of work for me to send it to not only Wyndham Central email addresses, but to your other email addresses as
in
well.
case.
So I hope everybody did get it. I hope everybody got it twice. You should have. I did get some bump backs from others where they bounced, and who knows? Some of them were even Wyndham Central ones that bounced.
Yeah.
So
People cut us off.
we'll see. The communication is an ongoing issue here in Wyndham Central, and there haven't been a lot of replies. Let's put it that way. So.
I would love to do it.
I know.
Just don't.
And I knew it was a bigger challenge for both for both Leland and Gray and for Dover, because, we were looking for someone, because those two boards have already been represented on the committee. We were looking for someone outside of that, but we'll see what comes out. I'm still waiting to hear.
Yeah, talk it up in your respective towns.
Yeah. Okay. Nothing else? We need to,
Yeah. Science, we're done, right?
we did science. Do we need to do more?
Middle school to high school acceleration.
I do want to just speak
Okay.
briefly about that. So one of the school board's goals is for students to be challenged by readiness, not age. And there were 6 students who were accelerated from 8th to 9th grade last spring. And there has been much discussion since about differentiation to address the learning needs and aspirations of our most prepared, most able students. And what impact that was on the class when 6 students were removed. What happens with those students now they're all in 9th grade or in 9th1/2 grade, and there's a lot of implications. And so I'm actually studying it through using a variety of data, both quantitative and qualitative. I did a focus group with the students who were accelerated and have been speaking with the middle and high school teachers, as well as looking at how they did academically, and have spoken to a few parents of those students as well. Next month, the 2 teachers, or I should say the teachers of the subjects that the students were accelerated in, which were English and science. That was primarily what they remained in their electives with the 8th graders last year, but for English and science, which takes up half their day, they were accelerated. And so I have asked if we want to consider not accelerating students, then those 2 teachers of 8th grade, English and science, need to demonstrate to the school board how they either are currently or will differentiate up, so that there is constantly an honor strand taking place in the classroom, so that there wouldn't be a need for the students to be moved up into 9th grade, because their grades were really not different. They got A's in 8th grade, they got A's in 9th grade, they had different material, and a problem is posed now that we have curriculum alignment, because if the students who were accelerated miss the learning in 8th grade, will they be able to perform on the state exams if they have these gaps in content? Well, I can tell you that they did fine, having taken the exams in May, even though they weren't. So although that was originally a concern, now we got the scores, and they all passed and did well. And so at our November board meeting, I have asked the 2 teachers, like I said, to come in to show, and then we could consider perhaps using classroom differentiation like they do in the elementary school level, so that those students can remain part of the continuity of the class, because there's other implications besides academic for not just those who were selected, but for the rest of the class. And so I just want to, it's not just the middle school teachers who are interested, but we have a school improvement team as part of not having met adequate yearly progress, and they're very, very interested in this data, and we'll be reviewing it in a week from now. It's also called the Curriculum Council, represented by math, English, science, and special education teacher. So any questions? I mean, it's...
So what's your sense? I mean, speaking from sort of personal experience, you know, with my kids, having that opportunity to be bumped up to another grade level, let's say like in math, made all the difference in terms of motivation and excitement and where they ended up. So if that can be achieved within the classroom, and they don't have to necessarily go to, like you're saying, within the classroom, have that differentiation.
I'm not saying it in math, though.
Okay.
No one's saying, so...
Okay, but
so
but logically that could occur in... No,
it's not, I don't think so. I don't
well,
think so.
on my son's case it did, though.
No. So your son was accelerated in math, you're saying?
Well, he just got bumped. I mean, he just,
Yeah.
you know, he's just started at a different level
Yeah.
because of...
Well, can we talk about a hypothetical student?
Okay, but
okay.
my point
Well,
is
yeah.
that it makes a difference for those students who are able to do it. That,
Yes. And so what I meant to say is that at this point, math is not on the table for discussion, that students are being accelerated 1 or 2 years ahead.
In math.
In math.
Okay.
And so as the discussion is taking place it's specifically about 8th to 9th grade in English and science, because it's half their day, as opposed to a period all year.
oh, I see, yeah.
So,
Yes,
and
still, though.
in a couple of years' time, the Common Core requires Algebra 1 in 8th grade. So right now, we've just instituted it for all ninth graders who haven't had it in eighth grade. So it's about 70% of the students haven't, or 75% of the students haven't had it as eighth graders, so they have to do it ninth grade. And so instead of preventing this, in math, preventing students from accelerating, we're actually bringing the acceleration down to them. That's right, that all eighth graders would be what we would call accelerating, but in the rest of the world outside the United States, they're doing Algebra 1 in eighth grade. So your point is, like, your question is a really good one, and I neglected to mention that while there's always discussion about, in English and science, but it's not talked about in math because it's
already
fait
happened.
accompli.
Yeah, it's already
and
happening.
we don't have any math teachers complaining about it. Their
Okay.
their attitude is a traditional one. Why hold a student back when they're ready to move on to geometry
So
or
we want to see
algebra
that
2?
happen across.
Well, it's a question. It's not really, the administration, I don't think, is ready to make a recommendation regarding it. The good news is we're exploring this possibility. We have some students that, tried it out. I will point out the contravening argument, and the reason why there's a distinction between math is that when you're talking about language arts, and to a lesser degree science, but certainly language arts, I'd be concerned about the developmental readiness of the maturational readiness of the child, the student, in 8th and 9th grade. There are significant differences, those of your parents probably recognize, between even your kids in the same family. There were differences in how mature they were, or how well they were able to engage or appreciate some of the issues in literature or in writing, written expression. That's not a stopper. It's just that it's something we have to be cognizant of as we try to meet the needs of all students to the best.
Have you talked to the teachers who will be running these classes, where they will be teaching two classes at the same time?
Yes, and
They're up for it?
they want to do it. They want to keep
Not
the
being a teacher.
right. They want to keep the
daunting.
strongest students in their classes.
But we've been
It
focusing on
affects
that.
the whole
Right.
class climate when they're removed. So the sort of the middle of student achievement, if they're removed, and it was 10% of the 8th grade last year, so it reduces somewhat. And yeah, it's only 6 kids, but they have they felt an impact. And if they can demonstrate that they can do it, then a couple of years ago, when I first started the parent advisory group, wanted to see that. I mean, and I think that also led to the development in the school board that we want to see students challenged by readiness, not age. And so that came again. That I don't want to say it originated, but it was also of concern in the parent advisory group. And so I asked some teachers to come in and attempt to demonstrate how they differentiate up. And at that time, they were unable to demonstrate it, at least to my level of satisfaction. So that's why we moved ahead and said, these students need the challenge. And at this point, I have much more confidence and said, now that it's a board level issue, that's the place for it to go. So, and I don't have a decision right now, looking at the data. I do want to hear what, when I met with the parent advisory group about the same topic, now it's a very small sample of parents who attend, they what should I say? Well, I don't want to say they could go either way, but they could understand both sides of the argument and trusted the judgment of myself and the teachers.
Yeah. Those students themselves. Makes sense.
What is very challenging about this issue is just that it's an individual decision about individual students' needs, but it's in the context of what effect does that have on the rest of the school climate and the rest of the school. What are the consequences 3 years hence if we continue to do this? I mean, that's really the puzzle. And that's why it is, I think it's a fabulous, engaging issue. And I think everyone should be encouraged to have an opinion on it.
6 kids out of a class and move them up one, aren't you ultimately going to replace them with, the ones that need to be accelerated from the class below them?
Well, that, we
does
didn't
it
have, we
wash
didn't have
out?
any acceleration in, from 7th to 8th grade except in mathematics. So it was specifically English and science. So we didn't have any 7th grade students moved into 8th grade science.
Yeah,
It
we
didn't
don't have
happen.
any, we don't
Right,
have any
but this
demonstrators, but
was
it's logic.
like a sample test.
Well, and we didn't have necessarily we didn't have the demand to do it either.
You would be assuming that every class had a certain percentage.
Well, not the same percentage, but I
I'm
would
just
assume
saying
that
that-
every class has
Yeah.
some.
You present a very, very logical argument about it.
As
I
he
don't know, you
always
could say
does.
it's, it's, look at it, what's about the 5th grade and the 6th grade and so forth. I mean, really.
I would think that the piece where you're moving somebody out of a class that's, the same all year long to one that's half a day, half a year, that would throw me all off.
Well, it seems like in the ideal world, if the classroom teacher can maintain that distinction, that would be the best, because it's great for the classroom atmosphere and.
But that's been a focus, right, for us for quite some time.
But we
Differentiated.
But I'm saying,
What's the effect?
but, well, that's the,
That's
that is the question.
That's what your board needs to be looking for, is what's the effectiveness, what are the outcomes, and what are
So-
the indicators?
You know,
And so in order for it to
Can be.
change back, then we need to have some compelling evidence that
Right.
the teachers are prepared to do it.
that's right.
Yeah. Well, good
Okay.
luck.
It's interesting.
Well, for
Hang
all
that
of
one
us.
on your hat tonight,
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments or questions? If not, okay, we need to approve bills and pay orders, and I've got one in front of me, but I keep hearing all these rumblings beside
No,
me.
you're
where-
fine.
Oh, you already, you are?
You talked to Frank after, but
Okay.
doesn't make any difference.
So they, okay. So they had some clarifying questions, which they're gonna just run to Frank on, but this is approved by them. Okay, so we have warrants and pay orders. We have warrants, boy, I'm gonna tell you there's, because the way we do them now, there's 5, for $159,327.50, and payrolls from 9/14, 9/21, and 9/21 as well, totaling $111,947.50. Total warrants and payrolls are $271,275 even. We need a motion,
Move to approve bills and pay orders.
and,
And I'll second.
both of them, but, okay. So, it's been moved and seconded to approve those as read. Comments, questions, anything you want to put? All set?
Yeah, you'll be
Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion passes, thank you. Consent agenda, just need to actually approve that by consensus. There's no opposition to approving the consent agenda, which is the minutes. We'll take it that it's approved and move on. No executive session needed, I don't think. I mean, I know there's not one.
That is correct.
Okay, so none needed at all from the administration. Perfect. Time of next meeting, November 13th at 7 p.m. I don't know if any of you are signed up for the one this Thursday, but I know some of you are. There's some on your part. So there's some for the VSBA regional meeting here at Leland Gray in the Dutton Gym, and then the conference, and then also the red, which
And then
isn't
the
on
red
here, but
on,
the red is on
November 28th, if you want to add that to your
Oh,
list. The red meeting is November 28th, that's a
At
Wednesday.
Leland Gray at 7. Okay, so I just need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Mike was right on it, and Joe, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you, everyone.